And we're live.
So good evening, everybody, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We are delighted to have you, and we're in for a really wonderful evening of discussion and conversation. I'm Renee Rattray, and it is my pleasure to moderate this very important session that we're hosting today. I wear many hats, but in AISK, I'm a board member at AISK, a parent as well, and an educator who has keen interest in many different types of schools. And so AISK is one of those places that I learn a lot from and share information as well, based on the things that they do. So I am thrilled to have you here. I know that so many of you have said that you are going to be logging on from private schools for primary schools. So if you're there, send us messages in the chat. This is going to be highly interactive. As we do as educators, we talk and we share. And so that's the kind of, hi there. So that's the, oh, that's you, Anna. And so that's the kind of exchange that we want to have this evening as we talk about getting ready to reopen schools, considering what that would look like and all that. So listen, we're experiencing extraordinary times, and extraordinary times call for extraordinary actions, extraordinary leadership, extraordinary planning, extraordinary creativity. Oh my gosh, do we need creativity now more than ever? But we're Jamaicans, right? So we turn we hand make fashion, and we do what needs to be done. And it requires for extraordinary collaboration and extraordinary compassion with each other in everything that we're doing. And so I'm excited. I'm excited about this time as much as it is ridden with anxiety. So we're all first timers this year. Everyone is learning. Everybody on this panel is learning, and everybody out there who is listening is learning. No one is an expert in this moment. We're all learning about what we need to do in order to protect our children, in order to ensure their well-being is priority, their safety is priority. And the only way that we can do that is if we collaborate, we look at best practice, and we share ideas. We just, in education, you just have to teeth. It's not even teething, it's just sharing so that we're doing the best by our children. And each school is unique, right? Which is what is so rich about all of this. Each school has its own circumstances, but we all have the same objective. And I feel that there are things to be learned from everybody. So we want you to share as much as possible today. It's an exciting time to be discussing education because there's so much possibility, and for us to reimagine new ways of doing things. So today, the AISK team and the Phoenix Academy team are here, and they're going to be sharing you. These are the people who have made things happen. These are the people who don't sleep and who have been working over time since March, when COVID hit, not since July or August or September, but since March, to try to see how we could think through what would happen if school were to be open and if not. And I know that many of you are in this space where it could be any day. It may not be right now, but it also could be anytime soon. Or they're just things that we have to consider and plan for based on the dynamic nature of this crisis. And so I'm just giving you a little bit of data here from the UNESCO study that says 1.58 billion learners are temporarily out of school. Now that number has been reduced by about 300 million. So students all over the world have been returning to school and doing so safely, where the situation has permitted it in terms of the health situation in the country, in the community, and also where leaders have been very deliberate and thoughtful about how to do so. So I'd like to introduce this amazing panel, and we're going to get it right into our discussion. Here we have, who shall I start with? Chris, I'll start with you because you're the guy among us.
The one guy.
So this bevy of beauties. So I'll start with Chris. Chris is the vice president of GISA, which is our Independent Schools Association. I know that organization very well, Chris. I was president at one point. So you have a really good view of what's happening in schools in the private school sector, and you will be able to give much insight. He's also the founder and principal of Phoenix Academy, and which is a private school as well. And he was an education officer with responsibility for private schools. So he kind of has a good idea of how things work on the ground, as well as how they work in terms of policy and how all of that comes together. And he has opened his school, and it's going well. So he'll tell you all about that. And then the team from AISK, starting with Anna Wallace, Thwaites Wallace, who is the deputy head of school and also head of admissions. Anna, say hey.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being on our webinar. We look forward to sharing.
Awesome. So Anna is the person who helps to steer, one of the people who helps to steer the ship at AISK. And then Nicola Melhado. Nicola is the projects director. And if you ever know the story about the little engine that could, that is Nicola. She has battery, and she gets every single thing done and makes you get things done too. So Nicola makes things happen at AISK and has been very instrumental in ensuring that the systems were put in place from very early. She did so much research overseas and at local schools to figure out how things were going to work and what we could do to ensure that that school would reopen in a safe way. And then Ingrid Fitt. Say hey, Ingrid.
Hi.
Ingrid is the operations director at AISK, and she manages the plant and all of the things that that go into making the place fit for purpose is Ingrid, and managing the staff who handles that. Pat Watkins, a genius in our midst, people. She is the IT director at AISK and one of the really important people who has helped to support the school opening, and not just school opening, but online learning. So get to know her very, very well. She's somebody who, after this call is over, you need to give a call and hire her as a consultant. She'll be willing to give you some information as well, but she's really a dynamo, and I think that you will benefit from some of what she will have to share. So we're going to move right into it, and I'm going to ask Nicola and Chris, first of all, to give us a few minutes, talk to us a few minutes each. I'll start with you, Nicola, and provide us with a bit of context. Give us a brief overview of the main challenges, first of all, that faced you as a school as soon as COVID hit, and you realized that we were going to be on lockdown for a while, and what that would mean for the future.
I think, like everybody, I mean, none of us knew anything about a pandemic or what a pandemic really was. So a huge part of it, I think, for everybody was the fear, and managing the fear. But I think after you kind of came out of that, it's like, well, what do we do? What do we do? And fortunately for us, we have a huge network outside of the country, and many schools who had opened and knew exactly what to do, and they were actually facing things head on. So our team did a lot of research. We did a lot of webinars, and hours on hours of webinars, reaching out to our other heads of school, and we know quite a few out there, and just seeing what they would do and what they needed to do. And a lot of them helped us in terms of, I mean, we did up the campus protocol, which I think everybody got a copy of. And we have an update, guys, which I'm sending out to everybody after this. So look out for it. But they actually, having been opened and going through it, they sent us their protocols. So out of their protocols, we had to design the protocols that suited our community and what our community's needs were. And that was fortunate. We spoke to people as far as China, Thailand, Copenhagen, that's Denmark. I mean, just like they were so giving, really giving. So we felt that we had to pay it forward as well. And this webinar is also us paying it forward. But I just think you have to just use your creativity, and just, nothing is too big to try.
Right.
I think that's one of the things that we actually work with at AISK, is that nothing is too big to try. Nothing is too big for you to try and create out of. So I think that was our main thing. And then the first thing that we did, I think on the Monday before the lockdown on Thursday, we realized that we were going to have to shut down. So we formed a crisis management team. Now it's important to have a separate team that works independently of the school that will make the large decisions around the pandemic and around what you have to do. And the important,
why is that important?
Because first of all, that team during that time met 3 mornings a week. That team made all the decisions in terms of what were we going to communicate, because we realized that communication was important. We communicated 5 days a week. 5 days a week, our community got an email that outlined things like what was happening in the larger community. So we would give all the information coming in. We would give information about the distance learning plan at the time. We would give information about things like how to keep well during the time as well, because it was new for everybody. So communication is very important. As things come up, that you're transparent. Transparency is extremely important, because that way you're trusted to, when you make a decision, that all the things that you would have done has had the children and the faculty and staff in mind.
Right. So, and people would be confident that the research that
very confident
is in the best interest of everyone.
Right.
Chris, can you speak from your perspective? How you were able to, begin right after COVID started, and what the challenges were initially?
Well, the schools, I think in March, schools were ordered closed. We had actually closed our school already because we wanted to do deep cleaning. And then schools right across the island were ordered closed. We had some early challenges with the technology. And so we had to work through those. But in respect of preparing the school, one of the most interesting things that Phoenix is a very small school, and we cater to students of all learning abilities, but we have a large number of our students. So we had to take into consideration how useful online learning would be for some of these students. And for us, we had to approach it a little differently. So as a small school, we had to identify the strengths of persons within our school community, because we took a school-wide approach. Small schools can also be encouraged to utilize the strengths and the professional expertise of those parents who are there. We had parents who were health inspectors, who were medical practitioners, who could have given us a lot of insight on how to plan and implement. The Ministry of Education, of course, sent us the protocols. And based on the protocols that were sent to us, we were able to implement them based on the interface we had with some of our parents who really were very instrumental in helping us to put things together. So we were very transparent with our parents. We had to provide a context for why parents can be encouraged to send their children out, because there was a lot of fear at that time. There was uncertainty surrounding the virus. And of course, this was a serious public health issue because it's a pandemic. And so parents themselves were concerned. They were listening to the media, and there was a lot of apprehension. And so one of the things that we really had to do was to dispel that. But we had to engage our entire school community to come together, because one of the things that I found to be extremely useful is that when parents and every single member of the school community, when they are a part of the process, they take ownership of the process. And that is really what you want. Everybody has to understand that if it is that this is something that we're doing, this response is something that has to be taken on by every single person in the school community. So what we did, we offered the parents an option. We said to them, well, listen, you can do the, probably I don't want to get too much into that at this point, but we gave them the option, and the option gave us information. We had an idea how many parents were interested in sending out their children. And from day one, parents were very clear that face-to-face works well with their children, because the struggling learners are really going to be exempted from the teaching and learning process when they are engaged through virtual learning. And so we had to look at that seriously and what it meant.
Right. I love that you've touched on making everybody a part of the process in order to take ownership. How important was it for you to, both of you, to survey parents, to find out from the outset what their thoughts were, what the anxieties were, and to seek to address that in your planning?
Well,
Nicola?
data drives, generally data drives educational planning. We know that.
Right.
And so very early out, we discovered that over 85% of our parents were opting for face-to-face. And so one of the things we have to understand as school leaders is that it's really, in a lot of cases, the parents who are driving the demand for that kind of teaching and learning interaction. And we have to understand that the students were out of school for a protracted period, an extended period of time. And so even though online was quite effective, schools, it would have been important for schools to start looking at the possibility of reopening their plans to accommodate those students who were excluded from the teaching and learning process because online simply was not working for them. So that demand came directly from the parents. And if you have 85% of your parents saying, I don't have the time, I have to work, it would be good if the school could consider this, then that's something that you can look into and then start putting the work in place to create a safe institutional environment for all the students, because everyone is going to be affected based on the kind of inputs that you invest. So for us, we focused on engaging the entire school community and looking at different ways in which we can do it. And we started there by engaging everyone. We had to be extremely transparent because parents were very skeptical, and we had to ensure that every single thing was in place. And the ministry sent us the protocols. And it didn't matter whether it was 2 cases, 2,000 cases, or 200,000 cases. The protocols apply regardless of the number. And enforcement was very critical, and that was something that we looked at. So we started at the point where we got the information we needed. We recognized that the parents were keen on face-to-face, and we started the engagement process and started working through all the documentation that we needed. But we were also very transparent with our parents. They had to know everything. They had to know the process. We had simulations. All of those things are possible because of the school-wide engagement of everyone.
I love that you've said that the protocols are important regardless of size. Whether you have 150 or you have 600, the protocols being put into place and also being adhered to are just as critical. Nicola, tell us some of the essential things that were required, that you knew that would be required to get school up and running. What are those things that the school had to consider? Just like an overview of what those things.
As we all know, by the time parents got to June, they'd all had it. They were not going to, it was like, first of all, everybody had to kind of get back to work. Some of them realized their limitations in terms of managing their children and the education space. And then the children also had it. So we kind of knew that we had to get this thing moving. We started doing our research as early as May and putting together the protocols. And as soon as we had our basic protocols, well, first of all, we knew we had to open. We knew we had to open before September 7th. And because of that, we realized that we would have to seek permission to open. Now, even though we got this 160-page document, which was very, very well written from the ministry about what was needed, there was still no real criteria of how to apply. But we realized, having put on the graduation a few weeks before, that we would have to go through a similar process. So we started putting together the protocols that dealt with, first of all, the risk matrix. We had a risk matrix, which dealt with the macro environment and what was happening with the pandemic, and in different scenarios that would tell us what phase we were in and whether we would be open, closed or face-to-face, and then how that would look.
Right.
Then we had to put together a campus matrix. So the campus protocol matrix, the campus hygiene matrix, is the one that tells us what are we going to need to open. You know, hand washing was important in terms of keeping your hands clean via water or via hand sanitizer. Those are two different methods of cleaning hands. In terms of contact tracing, should you have a case, well, can all the kids just go to any bathroom? No, they can't do that. You will have to know which set of kids go to which bathroom. So if you have an issue, you will know how to trace who was going where. Things like how many maps are we going to need? You know, just even in terms of quantity and number, what's our behavioral strategy going to look like? How are we going to do things in terms of spacing? I mean, I personally went through the classrooms and spaced every single desk. Moving 32 classrooms with 12 desks in each of it is quite a physical thing, but you know, you actually have to make sure that you do have the requisite space in between. It was a lot of physical work, but it was also a lot of mental work and really writing protocol that when you sent it out, that was one of the things that we realized. We would have to have protocol going out to parents so that they would actually begin to see the process and see exactly what we were doing and know exactly what we're going to do. And even before we opened, we knew parents would not be allowed on campus. So parents not being allowed on campus, how can you send a child to school and you don't know what it's going to look like? So we even had tours.
Right, which is what Chris was referring to, simulations, right?
So you have to do that. So, you know, it was making the parents comfortable that we got this, you know, and
that once people were able to experience it for themselves,
right.
It made a difference.
Right. I mean, even when you saw in our plans, just showing that X amount of desks and can fit in a classroom, that gives a parent an idea. Well, yeah, they understand that they're going to space.
Right, right. So Nicola, how did you manage, and Chris, you can answer this, how do you manage things like going out on the playground, having lunch, those times when children would be likely to congregate, you know, extracurricular activities? What were the kinds of decisions that were taken around that?
I would give that question to Anna.
Or Anna? Come on in.
Right. Well, at this time, we decided not to have any extracurricular activities because the day has been staggered, so we have a staggered drop-off time for our grades and a staggered pickup time. And that's how we were able to manage the crowding at the entrance of the school. Everybody was able to come in through one turnstile, which takes temperature and ensures everybody is wearing a mask. So the parents responded very well, and the children are very used to it now. It's happening a lot more quickly. So we just have the kids coming in 5 to 10 minute increments, depending on grade level, and leaving in the same way, in the same manner. In terms of something as simple as dismissal from classes, we have, you can no longer dismiss your class and open the door and everyone goes trundling out, you know. You really have to be thoughtful about sending students out in smaller groups, or, you know, creating lag time between them so you don't get that bundling on the stairs or that bundling on the walkways, allowing them to, and they get quite quickly conditioned to the expectations of them. But it does, or what we expect of them, it does take constant monitoring. And so it's always all hands on deck all the time. On the playground, or for playtime, what we are doing is that the students are playing in their grade group pods, and they are playing while distancing. So they're using the swings, then the swings are sprayed down, or whatever games or things that they would be playing, hopscotch, you know, different things. A lot of those games have come back in different ways, and the kids have gotten, they're actually starting to create their own games, as children often do, that permit them to still have fun, but and to enjoy the outdoors, but to remain safe. You know, and they are going out to play with their masks as well. About
tag with the leaf.
or tag with the leaf. Yes, they've designed a game that's tagged with a leaf where you tag and you touch the big leaf, which creates a big distance between them, but you don't touch anybody, right? And so their creativity is actually blooming and blossoming in a space. Another great example of something that we really thought would be challenging, but we have it going pretty well, is the PE classes. And so we do have the privilege of having a big field, and I think most schools have a space big enough for play. And another thing that was important was to leave it up to the professionals in the various subject areas to help to figure out what can work in their subject area. And so PE is taking place, and we're using basic hula hoops and or skipping ropes and things like that on cones to create circuits for running, or pathways where the students maintain the distancing, but they're still getting that physical exercise and they're learning the physical education skills. So things like that. I wanted to circle back to why the CMT, the team, and what we have found, and we still, yes, why we still, a crisis management team. And what we've found really is that kind of what Chris said, and Nicola, but it's so important to have different minds in the room, or different minds coming to the table, multiple people coming to the table with multiple perspectives to help you to make the decisions that you're making along the way. It would be crazy and quite a burden to try to carry it on your own. Yes, leadership is a very lonely job, but you need your people now like never before. Right. Because
so coming from different parts of the school, people Correct. Who are in yes. the community in different ways is important.
Correct. Because there's always something you never thought about, right. or you cannot think about, but somebody else may have. And so that's helped us a lot in terms of problem solving and solutioning in the different scenarios that we've come across.
Fantastic. Before I go to Chris for him to share on that, from his perspective, there's a question here, Anna. Does your school year run from August to June? Do you have a preschool? And if you do, how is this experience? What does that look like?
So yes, our school year is an August to June school year. And so as Nicola mentioned, we knew we were going to be starting in mid-August, as we always do. Whether it was going to be online or face-to-face, that was a question, but we were pushing to start online. So a lot of our work had to start a lot earlier. And we knew we were going to push to try to get that permission to open from mid-August, and we did. And the other question was what? Oh yes, we do have a preschool. We have a preschool, so we do have 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds. Our youngest students are 3 years old, and they've been doing pretty well. So they come in, they wear their masks. They have an option of wearing a face shield as well. Most have not continued to wear the face shields. They have been operating in their class sizes are maximum 14. Most of them are between 10 and 12. They've been amazing. They've been doing everything the same way as usual. And the difference is mostly in the teacher planning. So a lot of the things we've done, how the teachers have arranged a lot of things in the classroom is that students are using things in like a box, a toolbox, or you could use a shoe box or something like that. So as a teacher plans for her day's instruction, she might put every student having a basket or a shoebox or whatever container, a plastic container, all of the manipulatives that she might need or that student may need for that day's lessons are in their box or in their basket. So there's no sharing of manipulatives. And then that also gives the teacher time to clean those manipulatives or the cleaning staff to clean those manipulatives for whatever the next use might be. But so I guess packaging, you get, whether it's a Ziploc bag or whatever it is, and it becomes a part of the teacher's planning. And Manipulatives actually don't have to change every day because concepts don't usually change every day. You're doing a unit over a couple of days or a lesson over a couple of days. And so if you're using Unifix cubes or you're using beans or bottle stoppers or whatever it is, it's just staying with that child all the time. So, so that's been a part of the arrangement and managing the use of manipulatives and cutting down on the sharing.
Right. And Anna, we are going to be having a special webinar similar to this to have a discussion about the teaching and learning side and adapting for this period, both for the blended approach, correct?
For sure. So we are planning a webinar with the teachers, and so they will be able to give you, teachers from both schools, so they will be able to give you firsthand and or give your teachers firsthand information of how they're actually managing in the classrooms and as they go about their daily routines. So that should be coming up next week. We're planning for next week.
Awesome. Okay, please write your questions as we go along in the chat or comments as you feel led. Chris, I'd love you to weigh in on what has been happening at Phoenix based on what some of the things that Anna has shared in terms of the protocols that were implemented.
Okay, it was for us, we relocated during COVID. So it was both a challenge, but we took it as opportunity. So for example, while we were renovating the property where we are currently located, we took the opportunity to implement a number of the protocols, so it was a little bit easier for us. In addition to that, we had sent parents a 10-day grid. So we were saying to parents, within a 10-day period, we would want to see your child at Phoenix between 1 to 10 days, and we gave them options. So we were saying to them, your child could be at school for face-to-face only. They could also do online only or a mixture of both. And the ones who were interested in the mixed modality teaching and learning experience were the ones that were sent to the grid. And so what we had found, as I had said earlier, that a majority of the parents were choosing the full 10 days. And that was where we started having the challenges and recognizing that we really had to make further provisions for accommodating students because, as I said before, the demand came from the parents themselves. And so within that 10-day grid, the parents would indicate to us whether they would send the child to school. Week 1, I would send my child on a Tuesday and Thursday. Week 2, he would come on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or whatever the situation is. And we used that to frame how we were going to approach the management of students. Now, Phoenix is a little different because even before COVID, Phoenix is characteristically a very small school with 100 and odd students. And so managing that number of students was not very difficult for us. What we had to do was to create a culture of compliance. And in so doing, the parents had to understand that you drop your child off. The students had to walk from the vehicle to the area where the nurse was at. We had 2 wash stations. We had our temperature checks. They were recorded. So it is our security personnel and our school nurse that managed that aspect of it with support from our admin team. Parents were not allowed and still aren't allowed to be on the campus. They can only go as far as the drop-off point. I did say also that we are extremely rigid with the protocol. On the first day we saw, I did say that there was a child that I saw standing on the outside, and the school had recommended to his mother that he switch to online because for that particular morning, the child took public transportation, and we were obviously not going to take any chances at all. And so we were very rigid with the protocols, and we found that this had to be a part, it had to be routine for our students. And so one of the biggest challenges, obviously, for us, because we had students in our Kinder Lab 3, those 3-year-olds, up to, we call it Pep Lab 3, which is grade 6. And the students had to conform and wear their masks. I would go around to the classes. I would tell them that there's a gift coming for those students who are consistently wearing their masks because you have to be creative and encourage them to wear their masks. And what we have recognized is that the wearing of the mask now has become routine, and it is just part of their school culture, and it is something that they have embraced. And so we have put all the requisite protocols in place, all the tools that are required in our classes. The teachers are required to disinfect. We have parents preparing kits, sending to school, but we constantly communicate with our parents because they have to understand what is happening on a day-to-day basis. Quite frankly, if a child is coughing too often within a given day, then we ask the parent to come for the child. And I say, our school community is small, and so we cannot afford to take any chances because we're protecting those students who are there, and by extension, the families that they have to go home to with comorbidities are those, who are immunocompromised. And so those are the things that we had to take into consideration. It was a little bit easier at Phoenix, and this is why I want to encourage the smaller schools also to try and see if their school environment is ideal for face-to-face.
Right.
Because with smaller schools, we have all our teachers and staff on call. They are constantly watching the students. We have our ancillary staff monitoring the bathrooms. Luckily at our new location, we have running water. I mean, that was very rare where we were before, so that would have been a challenge. But we have running water, and we have far more bathrooms than we did before. So it's a little bit easier to manage. And we have support staff there to assist and support the students and monitor what is taking place.
Fantastic.
So the parents themselves are a part of the process, and they were very cooperative and still remain cooperative in respect of the protocols and the assisting us in enforcing those protocols. But what I found was that the information that we got from the parents initially helped us to frame how we were going to implement the program for our kind of school. Because as you can appreciate, every single school is different. And every school has a different culture, different set of parents, the physical plant is different. And so this will allow you to look at what you have and how you can work around it. So it was not very difficult for us because we had space. In some classes, we will have 4 to 6 students on a given day with the other students at home. And what we did, we used smartphones and tripods. So we purchased probably one of the most reasonable Samsung, I think it was the A10s phones. We purchased tripods, and they were set up in the classrooms so that the students at home would view the teacher teaching, but they would not see the other students in the class. And that takes a bit of managing.
Have we lost Chris? I think Chris is frozen. Anna, I see you responding to some of the questions in the chat here. One person said this may work for small schools, but not for larger schools. Can I ask you to weigh in on that?
Internet and...
Oh, Chris is back.
You're on mute. Okay, Chris, we lost you for a minute.
Oh, are you hearing me now?
We are hearing you, yes.
Okay, I'm not sure where I stopped. But I was
about the smartphones, your solution of smartphones.
Right. So we used smartphones with the tripods, and they were set up in the classrooms. We used Google Meets as well as Smart Term, along with the subscription-based websites such as IXL.com, ABC Mouse, and Starfall. So that constituted our online program. But for in-school, the teacher had the responsibility of teaching the students who were in front of him or her, as well as those behind the camera. So for some schools, they may find that a little bit challenging because, of course, it's easier if you have a device in front of you, but the students are not there. So the easiest way is to perhaps have all the students in the class, and that's not always going to be possible. But when you're doing both, what you find is that there's going to be a bit of a challenge, and the teacher really has to be checking if the students online are doing what they need to do, as well as facilitating what is taking place in the classroom. Right. So the information that we got initially was very, very useful.
To inform how you plan.
Right, as well as how we plan, yes.
Awesome. Okay. I want Anna to speak to training, because in order for this to work, your staff needed to be really prepared for what, with all the protocols. And then I'm going to ask Ingrid to weigh in on that as well, because you would have had to train your staff, you know, to do all the cleaning and get support to do that training and all of that. So talk a little bit about the teachers, Anna, and how you prepared them to be able to handle some of the things that Chris is speaking to that you do as well.
Right. So all of the protocol that we developed was this, what in a sense was, or our expectation is that the teachers are as aware of, and part of their responsibility was to be very aware and au fait with the protocol, just as the parents would be. So as Nicola said, you know, in designing the protocol, it was important to write it in a manner that made it very easy to digest, or easy enough to digest for all stakeholder groups, right? So that's where it would have started with the teachers. The teachers also did, we had the privilege of doing some training with a lady from the Ministry of Health who came in and spoke, gave all the staff and administration basic training about how to manage yourself and how to manage others around COVID-19. And so that was really helpful. And then a lot of the learning actually happened beyond that, happened through the questioning and the feedback there, and teachers thinking things through and asking questions about, so what if, and what if, the thinking through the scenarios, and the remainder on the ground. And I can say we've done a lot of learning, been through a lot of learning since we have opened. And there are some things that you just won't know, and you can't design and write down until you're in it, right? And so if you maintain a very strong basic level of protocol with the distancing and the hygiene, it gives you a little wiggle room, quite a bit of wiggle room to figure other things out. But if those basic principles that the Ministry of Health keeps pushing, that we see are working around the world, or not working in places that are not adhering to them, once you keep those in place and try to figure out the other bits and pieces relevant to your resources and to your plant, to whatever your plant is, you will be okay. Mm-hmm. And keep communicating, keep updating. As Nicola said, we have had to update our protocol because things change. And you realize some of the things that you write down don't work the same way when they come into practice.
Absolutely. Ingrid, share with us about the plant and how you were able to put things into place from a physical standpoint.
Okay, so basically, we started with, when you talk about the plant, we're talking about the entire campus, right? So that's classrooms and all the other areas on the campus. So that could be the center area, which we call our stage area. That could be the swimming pool. That could be the basketball court. So we looked at all the areas of the school. And then what we did is we built out a cleaning protocol. So what we did is, it's basically a schedule of cleaning. How many times you're going to clean that area, and how that area is going to be cleaned, whether you're going to be using alcohol, whether you're going to be fogging it, whether you're just going to get somebody to wipe it down. And so our cleaning protocol has all of that on it, and it has all of the times. So the team knows what time they're to clean, what area they're to clean, what product they use to clean, and what they're using to clean. So we developed that first. So we developed our cleaning protocol. And then what we did is we brought in somebody from, you can use any, we used Bug Off, which was a company that we used, and we brought in their managing director to train our staff the difference between cleaning and disinfecting, because there's a big difference between cleaning and disinfecting. So we had to train all of our staff, our internal and external cleaners, what that looked like. And then before we opened the campus, we had what we called a big deep clean. So we brought in professionals. We did not do this ourselves. And they went through the entire campus and sanitized the entire campus from stem to stern, right? And then once they left, we knew we had to take it over, right? So I think one of the ideas that you need to think about, and I think it's actually a genius idea, and Nicola actually thought of it, but we have caddies all over the school. And inside our caddies, we have hand sanitizing gel, you know what I mean? We have alcohol, We have J cloths, just plain old J cloths that we actually, in order to save money, we actually wash them at the end of every week. You know, like lotion and that kind of stuff. But these caddies are placed in our main areas, right? Our eating areas and those areas. And they're also placed in every single classroom. So what you'll discover, which is really cool and amazing, is that kids take ownership. They find it really important. So the caddies that are in like the eating areas, you will see kids, I mean, even small kids, take up the alcohol and spray their area and wipe it down. You'll see them in the playground spray their own swing and wipe it down. And they always return everything to the caddy. The caddies are labeled for the areas or the rooms. The caddies that are in the classrooms, the teachers manage. And that was to take some of the pressure off of the cleaning staff, right? You can imagine the pressure that they're under, right? And they're extremely exposed, as you can imagine.
Everybody's involved and everybody takes ownership for making
right. So the teacher, so if you know, typically we try and hold the kids into their classrooms, and if anybody has to move, we try and move the teacher. But if children leave a classroom, that teacher disinfects that entire area using the stuff that's in their caddy. Right. And you know, like I think Nicola talked a little bit about the setup of the classrooms. The easiest thing that we did was Nicola did a 6-foot stick. You know, it's too hard to walk around, guys, with a measuring tape. Let me just give you that piece of advice. Just cut a 6-foot piece of stick, even if it's a broom stick or whatever, and just separate the desks that way.
And then as markers.
Right. Now we have decals. You don't need to have decals. You can use masking tape. You can use painter's tape. You know, you can just become really creative with that. I would also encourage you all out there that you do not have to always be in a classroom. So I know that AISK is resourced very, very well, but we also, guys, have tents. We have a big tent on our stage area with stools that are separated 6 feet apart. It's just another outside area for the kids to lime. Really, you're trying to give the kids areas that they can hang out with their friends because they already have to stay far apart. Absolutely. We also have a tent in elementary set up with little chairs. You can use a tree as long as you keep the kids separated. Well, the ministry says if they're 3 feet apart, they have to be masked. At our school, we keep all our kids 6 feet apart, and our kids are masked from the minute they arrive to the minute they leave. And so are we. We never take off our masks at all. So just, and I love what Nicola said in the beginning. Be creative. You know, we're all learning this. None of this is cast in stone. Think outside the box. And you don't have to have all these fancy things. You can work with very basic things.
Earlier, turn your hand, make fashion.
I want to say something about the measuring.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's very important because I think space is at a premium, and because we're private schools, you do have to try and fit, because you know you can't do this without the money either. I mean, teachers need to be paid. Everybody needs to make sure that we're alive and well after all of this goes through. But when you're measuring, measure from center of desk to center of desk, because that's where the mouth is. So the 6 feet is from mouth to mouth.
Mouth to mouth.
And the 6 feet is from where the person sits to the back, so it's the back of the chair to the front, to the back of the desk.
Yeah.
That's the behind.
Right.
So, because if you try and measure between desk to desk, you're going to be wasting a lot of space.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great tip. Yes. Thank you for that, Nicola.
And then one thing I want to say about the training. The reason for the training is this. Everybody comes to this crisis with a different level of hygiene, cleanliness, and what they think is okay from what they don't think is okay. What you need to really establish is you need to establish what is your school's okay, so that everybody has to drop their idea of it, so that they pick up what the school has decided is the okay, and everybody needs to adhere to that. Right. So that's the reason for the training.
Absolutely. We're all on one page. Pat, I'd like to bring you in because you deal with something that's most important, and tell us about IT, the provisions that needed to be made, the key things that schools have to consider when they're going to be reopening, or if they're going to be going online fully or doing the switch, at short notice. What are the things that schools must have?
All right. Good evening, everyone. Technology drives it all. We have to have technology. Right now, AISK is open face-to-face, but we have a blended form of learning going on. Like Chris has at his school, we have a home learning plan that's happening where there are kids who, for various reasons, cannot come to school at this point. So they have to join classes online. So we have that. Now, the overall thing, Nicola talked about the different documents that we have. We have a de-escalation matrix, and that determines when we open and how we open. So right now we're in phase 3. Phase 3 allows us to be face-to-face and also run our home learning plan. We can, if we go to stage 4, we can go to our distance learning plan. And our distance learning plan is when everyone goes home and technology comes totally into vogue. So when we do that, we need internet service. Every school has to have internet service. We need to have some form of conferencing platform. Our students and teachers have to have computing devices, and we have to have some kind of a learning management system that pulls it all together. Chris, I think you once said that you used
Smart Term.
They use Smart Term and they use Google Classroom.
Meets, Google Meets.
Google Meets, all right. Google Meets is your conferencing. All right, we have a learning management system, a dedicated learning management system that creates the blended environment, as well as it has our conferencing software attached. So it's very easy.
Share with people what the name of the system is.
Oh, it's called Schoology. The learning management system is Schoology, and within Schoology, we have our conferencing system. So once our classes are set up, it's very easy for kids just to join the learning management system, click on the conferencing version, portion of the software, and join the conferences. Teachers can have synchronous lessons as well as we can have asynchronous lessons. As I think Nicola said once, this is very expensive.
Oh, it's very expensive.
Yeah, it's very expensive, and we know it's difficult for some schools, but there are loads of free stuff out there that with just a little consulting, even asking us at AISK, we have some idea of some of the free stuff that people can use. Any questions?
This thing where, I hear people, parents banding this about, oh, everything is online and online is cheaper. Online is not cheaper. The bandwidth is very expensive. The hardware is very expensive. The software is expensive. It is not cheaper. As a matter of fact, all of this couldn't happen without the plant being there either. So this thing where, private schools or schools find that they're making money. We don't make any money. We're all nonprofit, and this whole exercise has made it a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
And more challenging, because I think teachers will tell you they've never worked harder.
I'm telling you, I've never worked so hard.
Yes, absolutely.
We've all never worked this hard in our life.
Way in on the technology and how you've managed in that regard. Are you hearing me? I don't think he's hearing me.
I don't know. Chris, you can hear us?
I'll come back. Anna, are there any questions here that you wanted to share? Could you ask them out loud?
Sure. So one of the questions that I responded to was, what kind of masks are the children wearing? And so we have made no particular specifications about the masks, except that we will not permit the masks with the vents, the plastic vents or whatever vents in them, and that's what the science has said. And so it's the regular it's the regular this mask or the regular this mask. It's other than that, we've had no particular specification. We asked the children to bring 1 or 2 extra masks, and we do have a few on hand at school to give those children who end up losing a mask or who end up, the mask ends up breaking or something like that. Someone was asking a bit more specifically about the technologies we were using for our online classes. Pat, do you want to give a response to that?
All right. In some ways, AISK has been very lucky because we have always operated a blended system. We always had our learning management system, which was Schoology, where teachers post assignments, tests, quizzes, whatever is necessary, and students were able to go do their work, submit. So we always had that system. So when we had to go on a distance learning program, it wasn't difficult to make the move. The difference was our teachers now had to write their lesson plans to suit an online environment. But before, we were on a face-to-face environment, and believe it or not, it's not easy teaching online. You have to totally rewrite what it is you do, how you engage kids, because that's one of the problems. You have to engage the children. Some of them are not turned on by the screen, so you have to find extra ways of getting to them. So like I say, our main learning management system was Schoology, and we use it from early learning all the way up to grade 12. Logging onto the system in the elementary school, we use QR codes. So each child has their little QR code. They have to have a device. They have to have either their iPad or they have their laptops, depending on where they are in the school. And they simply launch the software, hold up their little QR codes, and they can log in. And they just love that in the younger ones. The older ones are old enough to remember their usernames and passwords. So we always had that system going. So although it wasn't, it's not the easiest thing teaching online 7 hours per day, our teachers had a little jump on it, okay? And they did manage, and they did really very well.
Right. Thank you for that, Pat. Anna, can you speak a bit about communication? And somebody's asking, a few questions are here concerning what would happen if somebody tested positive in the community. How do you communicate around that? And, you know, contact tracing, how that's managed within the school and how the community is informed about that.
So communication is so important at this time. We have communicated and over communicated. And I also want to harken back to something that Chris said about how important it was to have the buy-in of your different stakeholder groups and get them involved from the very beginning, and helping you make decisions from stem to stern. So it's a great opportunity to build community, to build school community, because in the end, all of the protocol that you design, all of it is worth nothing if everybody isn't coming to the table acting with a certain level of trust or integrity, right? And so you really have to have everyone as best as you possibly can, and making and giving the constant reminders, sometimes very lovingly and with a lot of empathy, and sometimes very sternly, as teachers and educators learn how to do very well, you know, because otherwise you can have one person just make a bad decision, and the impact of that is so huge in this time. And so always trying to remind and rope people in, and helping to guide people even what to do on their weekends or what not to do on their weekends is something that you learn how to do, and you have to do and do it nicely. We've even had to try to disaggregate who sends what message. So there are some things that school administrators cannot say and should not say. And so if you need to empower your parent or your parent WhatsApp groups or parent bodies to say something, that's really important, because they can communicate with parent to parent in a very different way than you can as an administrator to a parent, you know? And so just being smart and knowing the parents who you can use and who will support you in that way is also important.
talk about communicating with different stakeholders, Anna. So the communication that needs to get out to teachers and then parents, and the order in which, the sequence in which that happens.
Right. So for us, the way it works, once we realize that we have something going on that we need to speak about, one of the first things we do is we call our crisis management team together. And so our crisis management team, or usually our head of school, has a conversation with the person or the family who is having the issue. And she collects very careful information about the sequence of events that has taken place around a suspected contact with a positive case or with a positive case, right? And so because a lot of what happens with COVID, the science of it has to do with the timeline and or when the person has started to feel or experience symptoms, where they were at that time, whether they were on campus or they were at home, and all of these things. So getting the best information possible helps you the administrators, you the crisis management team, to make the best decisions possible about how we will react in, or how we have reacted in the various scenarios. No one scenario is the same, so that we have come to know. So once the management team, crisis management team meets, we've come up with a decision about how we are going to respond to the particular scenario. And some of it begins to get a little routine. So at this point, we have developed like some common templates that we, in terms of letters and things, and think like kind of like check boxes that you need, the things you need to check in your communication pieces, the boxes you need to check in order to ensure that your communication is detailed enough and meaningful enough to keep calm in your community.
It's that balance that you have to strike between
that reassurance, giving enough information and keeping the reassurance. Right. And so once we decide our plan of action, we inform our school board. That's priority, because you need to, depending on your school and the design of your school, it's important for your board to know what you're doing and what's happening, particularly in this time. And you also need to draw your board members close to you at this time, right? So we inform the school board, we inform our staff members. They have to know they're on the ground, and sometimes the decisions have involved closing down a grade level because of how they're operating, a whole class or a whole grade level. And so we send that grade level out, most often out of an abundance of caution, right? And so we inform the staff, and then we set about informing the families. And this happens pretty quickly. It has to happen pretty quickly, primarily because if you don't get it done quickly, the rumor mill starts going. Right? And so you want to be able to manage that as best as possible and set yourself up as best as possible to mitigate any stories going out that are not. So yes, the chatter can get wild on WhatsApp, right? And so we inform the families via a communique, however your school communicates to your families as quick as possible. That might be by SMS, that might be on your learning management system, depending on what resources your school has. Or it might be through your classroom WhatsApp groups, which most schools have at this time, right? And then we even go, if you are able to, and you have the resources to, we've had enough days to know that it is the right thing to do, or enough scenarios to know that it's the right thing to do, where if, for example, our grade 3 class, there's a situation where we think we need to close our grade 3 class, that we sit as a team, divvy up the names on that grade 3 class parent list and speak to every parent
individually.
You have to make yourself individually, you have to make yourself available. And when you make yourself available and visible, it brings the fear level just down a lot. It really,
we can't overemphasize this business of communication. Chris, you're winding down, but Chris, I want you to speak really quickly to communication as well from your standpoint.
Okay, communication, of course, is very important within the context of a school community. I find that when parents have information it makes your job a lot easier. And so I did say that we really had to be extremely transparent with parents. They had to understand what was happening. The simulations would have worked in terms of walking parents through what takes place or explaining to them this is what happens at the point of drop-off and giving explanations for why it is that they can't. Because sometimes we can say to a parent, you're not allowed to, but we really have to give an explanation. At Phoenix, we have our e-magazine that goes out on a Sunday this week at Phoenix. And one of the things I've always put in it is that parents also need to recognize that they are leaving their homes, particularly those students who are online. They are in public spaces where the enforcement of the protocols are not as rigid as they are in the private schools. They have to take that into consideration. Because I leave, I go to, say, for example, one of the government collectorates or whatever. I'm not targeting the government or anything, but you can go into these public spaces where sometimes they can be a little bit laxed in the enforcement of the protocols. And as a result of that, they are coming back home to their children. And that is why the schools really have to be very vigilant in ensuring that the protocols are enforced, because that presents as an opportunity for persons to contract the virus if it goes there. But once it is that the parents understand that they are a part of the process and that they can continue to communicate with their children, because we encourage that kind of communication. I've always said to parents, speak to your children about what is required daily. Another thing that works is that we ask the parents to provide a sanitization kit. And in that kit, we indicated what should be there. Of course, we stated that they should have non-scented hand sanitizer. Because some students, they do have respiratory issues. And when you have everyone using those scented sanitizers in the class, it creates a challenge for some of the students and it makes things worse. So simple things, we keep masks on hand, and I'm encouraging school leaders who want to explore the idea of face-to-face, that you keep gloves and masks available at the school, just in case a child leaves the mask or it's misplaced or it falls or whatever, that there's always access to those kinds of tools, those protective tools for students as they interact on a day-to-day basis. I find also that we have to be constantly reminding the students about the 6 feet apart, but we have our decals. Ingrid did indicate that we use simple tape and it works, you understand? And we use markers to color them and the students just find them quite useful. I mean, nothing has to be expensive. You just have to be creative and you have to understand exactly what it is that you want to accomplish and then use what is available to you. I think you had asked earlier about our IT, but we use Smart Term. And we use Smart Term because Smart Term has technicians that we can go to if there are challenges. And so for us, that was very critical, because there are going to be days when the internet access is not, the bandwidth is there are going to be challenges with bandwidth. And so we have to post work on classwork on Smart Term for students to go to, etc. Sometimes teachers are sending information over WhatsApp. You have to do what you need to do in order to make it work. But the parents have to understand that they are a part of the process, and they are part of the process in respect of educating their own children. When you go to school, it is important that you wear your mask. It is important that you stay 6 feet apart. Listen to the teachers. They have a role to play. And I found that, and I'm sure that is the same thing at AISK, that those parents are playing that role very well, because we included them in the process. And once they understood, then we were finding that it made it so much more easier for us. And so this is one of the things that is crucial for schools who are really considering the face-to-face or reopening or resuming their face-to-face sessions, is that the parents are going to be crucial. They are going to be playing a very important role. The The teachers have to be educated in terms of what they need to do and the training. Something as simple as the fact that when the Ministry of Health came to us, we had to switch to 5% bleach. You know, some persons don't know that something as simple as that, you know, they are going to tell you that you cannot use any other bleach, you need to use at 5% bleach. And we had to change out everything that we have purchased in order to be compliant that way. And I want to also say, Renee, to the schools, that the Ministry of Health, when they visit the schools, their feedback is quite instructive. I'm telling you, they have said things to me that I didn't even know. They are extremely, I mean, when it comes to them being good at their jobs, listen, I'm telling you, it makes a major difference because they make suggestions and we take the suggestions, and it has worked tremendously. And it has allowed us to provide our parents with feedback and allowed us to improve on what we're doing. So I'm not embarrassed if someone comes in and says, listen, I need to cite you on the fact that you're not using 5% bleach, because you will understand why it is that these things are crucial or important, because everything that they do is to ensure that we create a safe institutional environment, and we know the implications if we do not. So we are just saying that continue working with the Ministry of Health for those schools who are to be inspected. Do what you can within the context of your school environment. Incorporate the entire school community so that this is a collective effort and that everybody takes ownership of this effort. And then you'd find that everything runs smoothly, because we have been benefiting from a relatively smooth run at Phoenix Academy.
And can I just jump in here? I'd just like to add on top of that we can all do this. We can do this. There's wealth of information out there. We are all here. Okay, all of us. You can reach out to any one of us on these panels. We will answer you. We will help you. But I just wanted to just reiterate about the masks. It's very, very important that you provide masks and gloves, if they prefer, to the cleaning staff. That level of staff does not have the disposable income to be buying a mask every day. And you don't want those people that are exposed to everything every day to be reusing masks. So we just buy a box of disposable masks. They go to the nurse every morning and they get their new mask and they head out. That way they don't have to be providing that kind of money. So, you know, for schools out there, please protect your cleaning staff. They are the most exposed and they can spread it. And also protect your nurse. It's very, very important that your nurse has the right gear, that she is protected or he is protected.
And
because they are the most on campus.
Renee, you're muted.
Oh, I'm so sorry. They're chiming in and agreeing. So, no, Anna, I'm going to give either yourself or Nicola the final word, because you all have stayed on here with us. We said an hour and you're still here.
Right, yes, the attendees numbers are up. No, Renee, I see somewhere back in the chat where someone asked for a repeat of the explanation, Nicola, of how to measure the distance.
Yeah, okay.
Let's do that and then we'll move on. You're muted.
Muted, Nicola.
So if you think about it, the mouth is where everything comes out of. So you have to measure from the center of the desk to the center of the other desk sideways. For the rows, you have to measure from the back of the chair to the back of the desk, and that's 6 feet. And it's just easier, whatever spacing you're using, to actually cut a piece of stick that length, so you don't have to keep drawing out the tape and the tape slip back and all this drama. That's the easiest way to do it. And then depending on how close you want them to the board, I use like about 39 inches from the front of the class from the board, and then try to fit in. Our classrooms generally fit in about 14 kids. But that's how you measure. If you measure from side of desk to side of desk, you're wasting almost 18 inches.
Okay. Anna, there's one question here from my friend Gloria, I think, from Meadowbrook. She's asking about how do you operate during lunch? I think you touched on that before, but just very quickly.
Sure. So we have limited space for lunch, right? The outdoor spaces for lunch are also marked off with tape or decal to figure out how, and that's a sure 6 foot spacing or more, because the kids are taking their masks off to eat, right? And so, but being outdoors is definitely preferable, of course. So that's how the outdoor spacing is used for lunch, and there is a lot of monitoring. The children are, there are plenty adults out. The adults just have to go outside, and there's no having lunch in the staff room. You have lunch with the kids in that space, or you have to be out there with them. So we have many adults on duty, and it's hard. The teachers are getting less break times, but it's okay, and everybody's there for the wellness. It makes you know your students in an even different way. And so what we've had to do is to set up, that's how we've organized the outdoor spaces. And then apart from that, it is impossible to have all of the groups outside or all classes outside for lunch at the same time. And then that there's a rotation for that as well, not only a rotation in terms of timing throughout the day, but also a rotation of the days that a particular grade group will eat outside or eat in the classroom. And when they're eating in the classroom, they are sitting at their desks, so they're already spaced. So that is how we've managed lunchtime. In terms of the ordering of lunch, I know many of your schools have centralized ordering. It may not be electronically done the way we have managed to do it electronically. Some of you may have electronic ordering using student card or other methods. So we have managed to put together through a local company an electronic platform with our canteen concessionaire, so families can order online using a debit card or a credit card. There's a relay system where in big cooler bags, the students go and pick up for each grade those lunches. So not very different to what I know happens even in some of the other prep schools or primary schools, where lunches for each grade group is delivered to a certain space or place in the class. And so that's how that has worked. All it's done, it's just been a basic idea. The basic idea has been to work out systems to cut down the foot traffic that you usually have around campus. So it's not that there is no foot traffic, and it's not that you're just trying to limit it as much as possible in every scenario.
You need to, if you have water coolers, you need to change out your water coolers, because of course you can't have kids going down into thing to drink water, and you change out those for hand washing stations. So we had like 4 water coolers around campus. We changed them all out for hand washing stations.
You don't want them using water coolers anyways.
Take that out.
And the ministry doesn't want the water coolers there, right?
But in order to save money, hook up your hand washing stations to where your water coolers were. That's what we did. You just remove the water cooler and you install your hand washing station. You don't have to repipe to save money. Nick, somebody's asking about sharing the protocol.
Oh, I'm going to share it this evening. I'm going to send it through the GITA chat because I had to update one more thing on it, but it'll go out as soon as possible. So the updates are definitely going out probably in the morning. And we will also send it out through the email addresses that we got through the Zoom chat. So you can look out for that. And some people are asking about the tape of the webinar. We'll send that out as well.
The recording. Yeah.
The recording.
Yeah. Okay. So one of my favorite Maya Angelou quotes is, when you learn, teach. And I that's my mantra. And the more AISK is learning is the more they're teaching. The more Phoenix is learning is the more they're teaching. And this is what it's all about. I mean, collaboration is something that we have to do in an extraordinary way, as I said in the beginning, in order to support each other. We're all in this thing together. That's what COVID has taught us, that no one is exempt. What is that Bob Marley song? When the rain fall, it don't fall on one man house top. So we really have to stick together and learn from each other, seek people out and find out how to do things. And this team of people who has presented here today are open to sharing as much as they can with you. And so soak it up, call them. If you can't find them, call me, I'll connect you. If you and so thank you so much.
Call the switchboard, we'll answer. Send an email, we'll answer.
Absolutely.
Ask in the GISA chat. We're in the GISA chat.
The GISA chat. So Anna is there and she can respond to you as well. Chris, thank you so much for partnering. Thank you so much, AISK, for hosting. This is what it is all about. This is what professional learning has to look like going forward, where we're actually talking about our craft and refining and reflecting and sharing. Oh, I'm excited. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Sorry, Anna?
See you next week.
Right, so next, you speak to that, Anna.
So next week, we're planning for next week, Wednesday, at the same time, a different Zoom link, quite likely, but we'll send it out in a similar way, where we will have our educators online, or actual educators and building administrators speaking about, I guess, planning of how they've probably had to modify their schedules, how they've had to change the way they're operating or moving around the classroom, or again, those use of manipulatives, conducting assessments and things like that would be coming up for your teachers. So have your teachers join us. And of course, you're welcome to join us as well.
Awesome, thank you.
And Renee, yes, quickly, Renee, I would just want to take this opportunity on behalf of GISA to thank AISK for taking the lead on this. They are one of the schools that have been open the longest. They have quite a bit of experience too in doing a number of things. And I think it was very informative. And I think a large number of our independent schools are absolutely very grateful for what AISK has done in facilitating.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a good evening,
everyone. It's so lovely to meet you, Chris. I mean, look, if we didn't do this, we would know you. It was fabulous meeting you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody. We can do this. I promise we can do it.
Our children need us. Our children need us.
Our children need it. Children need to go to school. Please, we're here. Reach out to us. We will help.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Okay.